Okay, so welcome to the October edition of the Linkerd online community meeting. This is the second time we're trying this through Zoom. So we're still kind of playing with the format, but hopefully this is working for folks. If it's not, then please let me know. Okay, so today we're going to go through a quick recap of 2.6, which was out earlier this month, all the cool features there. Going to revisit 2.7, which we talked a little bit about last time, and get the latest update. We're going to talk about all of the crazy Linkerd content that's happening at KubeCon San Diego next month. Under 4 weeks away, so the clock is ticking. And I don't think we're going to have another, I think the next community call will be post KubeCon San Diego, so we'll all be recovering from that, hopefully. Quick run through our favorite Linkerd people of the month, the Linkerd heroes, and then special guest Darren Shepard of Rancher Labs is going to demo a cool project called Rio. And then finally, we'll play a game of Stump the Maintainer. So there is a chat function in Zoom, which Ivan is already using. He says Zoom on Linux reminds him of WebEx. Okay, well, I don't know if I can help you with that, but so please, I'll be looking at the chat window. If you have questions for anyone during the content of the call, just type it in the chat and we'll do our best to answer it. Okay, so with that, why don't we kick things off? I'm going to introduce two of my fellow Linkerd maintainers, Thomas Rampelberg and Oliver Gold, and I'm going to ask them to please tell us a little bit about what happened with Linkerd 2.6, released scant weeks ago.
Well, it was released scant weeks ago. I don't know how many weeks that is. What, 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, almost 13 days ago.
And so the big feature there was tracing.
And Alex wrote up a great blog post on what it takes to get tracing up and kick the tires with it.
What kind of tracing? Regular tracing?
Let me find a link to that here.
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, perfect. I threw it in the chat as well.
Yeah, so Alex wrote this really nice long article about how to use distributed tracing. I think us talking a little bit about what it means for Linkerd to support distributed tracing is probably warranted. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means that we can participate in tracing if you've instrumented in your application. There's very little the mesh can do for distributed tracing on its own, as this blog post kind of walks through. And so you have to change your application to get value out of tracing. And when you do that, Linkerd can participate in that tracing to show you how it's adding latency or reducing it in some cases, if it's applying retries, et cetera. And so we want this to be a diagnostic tool for folks who have a distributed tracing system already instrumented that's targeting the newer standards coming out of OpenCensus and OpenTelemetry, which are still very frothy and evolving. And then, yeah, so it's still experimental, but it's a good first milestone.
So you have to pair, like it's not enough to just flip a switch with Linkerd, you got to pair it with a bunch of other things, right?
Yeah, and in fact, we're working on instrumenting the control plane so we can use distributed tracing for our own diagnostics during development. Or if we want to help people dig into bugs in production, we can use this as an option to enable it via Helm or whatever. And so we're looking at this just some parts for our own benefit, so we can track down our use of Prometheus, et cetera. But also that if you care about these things and you already have all your stuff instrumented, Linkerd fits right into it.
Yeah. Okay. And it looks like you've got to use. So you need some kind of ingress layer that initiates the trace, right? And then you need to.
Right, like your application has to decide what spans are meaningful and worthy of tracing. And if you're doing that, typically through an ingress, because you want it to come in through the top so you can see the whole topology. And so we have a recipe. Is it with Ambassador, Thomas?
The demo is with Nginx.
Oh,
We tested
right
it with Traffic and Ambassador as well.
And so
Basically,
this is using the B3 trace context headers as well as the gRPC trace context headers. We wanted to use the newer W3C standards, but none of the ingresses actually support them yet. So it's a very frothy and flux solution. But I think it's helpful for us to put together these kind of end-to-end things, even though like a lot of this isn't Linkerd work. Linkerd is doing very little in this, but to kind of show how the whole application fits together and how a mesh enhances it, but isn't a silver bullet in this space.
Yeah, watching this work happen from the outside, what was weird is that so many people asked us for distributed tracing support, and then the actual amount of like code involved for Linkerd itself was pretty minimal, and the majority of the work seemed to be like figuring out all the different pieces that also had to be in place to actually make use of that.
Yep, and the point, I guess, is that while we're assisting, if you want to see the proxy traces, you need to use these components. There's nothing stopping you from using your tracing solution of choice. In fact, one of the big reasons we went with Open Census, now Open Telemetry, was because it has a lot of really great receivers and exporters, and so you can send all kinds of other library spans to Open Census and then put them into a bunch of different backends. And it looks like that's the way that the tracing community is going these days.
And then when you actually get everything working, you end up with cool pictures like this.
And the reason why there are so many spans for the proxy is that we're measuring all of the internal pieces there so that you can know exactly what latency the proxy is adding to every request.
Well, yeah, just like an application, it has a server side and a client side, and we might do retries in there. And so we need to decouple these things so that we can show, when it enters the proxy and when it's leaving the proxy, and if we send it out of the proxy twice, and things like that.
I see. So you're getting 2 spans per proxy and then 2 proxies per hop.
Right.
Okay. So even like ingress to web to emoji is like 47 spans here. That's fine.
Yeah, and you see that that actually shows pretty clearly that most of the latencies on the network, right? That the latency Linkerd is adding in itself is not really that bad. There's a little more on the outbound side than I would expect, but on the inbound side, it's pretty good.
That's because there's a difference. You're talking about the difference between.
Yeah, those deltas between all of that kind of show you the timeline of like, well, it enters the proxy here, it leaves the proxy here, it's recorded on the other side here. I mean, this all assumes that the network, that everyone's clocks are in sync, but
yeah,
they're good. They're good.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, great. So a big feature was distributed tracing. It's useful. We need lots of
yeah, if you're using tracing, it really can enhance your system. Yeah, and it should add very little overhead.
What else do we have in 2.6 besides tracing?
I've been working on 2.7 stuff for like a month now. I don't even remember.
All right, Thomas, over to you.
The 2 big ones are arbitrary headers in TAP now.
Oh, great.
With a fancy JSON output so that TAP's output is a little bit more readable and consumable.
Well, and actually you can just parse it through JQ now and do like full-on filtering, which is so much better than my first text version of it. It
is pretty useful. I've been wanting to write up a doc on interesting JQ filters just for it, but I haven't got around to it yet. So that was the one. Probably the biggest improvement for folks who've been using Linkerd for a while, though, is that we took on getting Prometheus load way, way down. for those who are interested in the details there, the dashboard was a little naive and would kick off 45 requests a second. So we redesigned the dashboard a little bit and got that load way, way down. The other big thing that we did was quite a bit of benchmarking. In 2.5, we turned on Prometheus scraping of all of the C advisor stats, and have since learned that that balloons the Prometheus size pretty extensively, especially on clusters that have quite a few nodes. In fact, I've chatted with someone who's running a Prometheus setup with multiple terabytes of memory, which just completely blows my mind. And so we did a little bit of Prometheus config tweaking to go and get all of those numbers down as well.
That's for Linkerd Prometheus?
Mm-hmm.
Good God. Okay. How many RPS is the dashboard doing on Prometheus now?
I think it's less than 5.
I'll say
I think it might be 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, there's still opportunities to, like, we have some things in the controllers where we're serializing requests to Prometheus that could be either batched or parallelized. So there's still more opportunities there for contributors to get and improve things.
Yeah. And quite a bit. In fact, as part of this, we've opened up a bunch of issues around Prometheus, especially because as we move into 2.7, we're going to be putting even more metrics in. And so we're being kind of sensitive to that and trying to figure out how to make it work with very large clusters as well as normal size clusters.
Did we also have didn't we get something else in the dashboard, like traffic splits?
Traffic splits are in the dashboard now, yep.
Yeah, okay, great. So those were added in 2.5.
The dashboard's making lots of just kind of steady improvements. I think every release you'll see a whole lot of polish and just, you know, we're trying to make it more usable and feel more native with the Kubernetes primitives. Okay,
great. So that was 2.6. What's going on in 2.7?
Well, we're really focused on the non-HTTP story or the non-golden path story in 2.7. So what we've done so far is that if you're using Kubernetes services with HTTP traffic, we'll encrypt that, we'll get mutual identity, we'll do lots of things on those connections. But if you're talking HTTP to a specific pod by an IP, or you're, as Prometheus does, or if you're sending opaque, non-HTTP traffic, or if you're sending TLS traffic, like to the Kubernetes API, the Linkerd proxy tells you very little about those traffic flows in its metrics today. And it doesn't add any value in terms of identity. And so in 2.7, we're taking a pretty large step forward, I think a little larger than we first anticipated, in terms of making that much more transparent and part of the discovery flow, so that we'll be adding identity onto any pod-to-pod communication that is managed by Linkerd on both sides. And in the cases where you're talking to opaque TLS services like the Kubernetes API or an external service like GitHub, we'll be able to start surfacing those traffic flows with the names associated on the TLS streams. And so we'll be adding a whole lot of visibility into the raw transport TCP layer of the proxy, which is going to put a whole bunch of pressure on Prometheus, but also will open more opportunities for expanding TAP and really improving the diagnostic and visibility story there, as well as the security story. We see this as kind of a large prerequisite before we want to tackle any sort of egress policy or even the authorization policies, right? This is a big milestone that gets us to be able to do default deny security policies. And so 2.7 will both be big metrics improvement as well as a big step forward in the security roadmap.
And the metrics are going to be able to do things like create an auditing command. Saying that everything is MTLS is great, but you really need to have metrics to be able to look at what edges are TLS and which aren't and why. And so you'll be able to take a look and reason about what's going on in your cluster, which is that, again, steps towards the default deny, because without an audit tool, we don't want to just brick your cluster. We actually want to give you the tools to go look at it and understand how things are working, and then incrementally move towards a default deny. And that kind of fits in with the project mentality of do it slowly, incrementally, and move forward there.
Default deny being like you're not allowed to make connections unless you're explicitly.
Unless we want everything to go through TL, basically have default TLS. And so you can say what we want is to have a policy that says all traffic except for health checks and readiness checks and whatever must be TLS. Otherwise, we won't allow the connection to occur. And so that way, if you're talking to anything, we'll require that either the application or Linkerd is initiating TLS. We don't care which one, just that someone's doing it.
Okay. Yeah, and so John asks, any more thoughts on proxy protocol support, allowing an ingress controller to do TLS termination to get the correct client IP? Oh, I see Thomas is already answering him in chat. This is specifically the all caps proxy.
Yeah, and so we should just treat that as pure TCP traffic and forward it through. We don't, I mean, if the request is, can we decode that and do extra stats on that stuff? Yeah, probably. That's a reasonable enhancement request. But we shouldn't break anything today. It should all just forward through like anything else.
Okay. Great.
There is some weird stuff in AKS where they have special DSR setups. I think that's a longer conversation we have to have with the Azure networking team to figure out what their view of that is and how we, what the proper solutions are there. But that's sort of the thing that we want to push into SMI as a kind of standard controller or whatever, rather than have to take on a link directly.
And we've been having those conversations already.
Great. All right, Azure networking, hope you're there. Hope you can hear us.
Well, we'll talk to you in an hour whenever Thomas talks to them next. Yeah.
And then so getting back to 2.7, the other thing I've seen a bunch of tickets for is cert rotation in the control plane.
Yeah, so right. So we ship a default set of credentials with Linkerd installed just so we can get identity bootstrap, but it works very much like the default Kubernetes install does, where you get a year-long cert, and after a year, that thing is going to die on you and your cluster will stop working in some ways, which is a fine for lots of staging clusters, but it's not a great production story. In the meantime, Cert Manager has evolved to be something that lots of folks are using to manage certificates for, especially for ingresses, but it becomes a way of doing a chain, well, a link in a CA chain that's pretty helpful for Kubernetes. And so we want to continue to support the old model of us just generating ephemeral certs and working for getting started use cases, but also if you happen to have a cert manager configuration, well, we can integrate well with that, so you can use that to manage Linkerd's issuing certificates. That should also, in theory, allow this to be bootstrapped off of cloud providers, right? So since Cert Manager is going to have integrations with AWS and AKS Vault and all these things, we can allow that to do the seeding communication with the external cloud providers, give Linkerd a signing cert that we can use for our ephemeral keys, which are, right now they have a day, I think, of lifetime, and we'd really like to reduce that down to an hour or less going forward, but that's part of the roadmap.
And technically, you don't actually need to use Cert Manager. We're really just agreeing to support a common secret format. And so you'll just be able to go create that yourself, whether you want to use Cert Manager or something else entirely, and then rotation and everything will work that way.
Got it. Okay, so this all sounds to me kind of like security hardening stuff.
It's one of those where this MTLS stuff got in 2.4, which would have been in the spring this year, and we're slowly polishing all of that out with tackling the cert rotation, getting it to work for the pure TCP, kind of all along the path towards really deep ACLs and policy around it.
Yeah, and to reiterate, the real concrete milestone we're marching towards is to be able to have a mandatory TLS policy. And so all of these things we think are necessary to actually enforce that policy in a production environment.
Mandatory TLS. Okay.
But like also, I don't think Linkerd as a project wants to be too much involved in prescribing how key management or cert management or any of the things are done. And so we want to be outsourcing to other projects like Cert Manager or Small Step or any of the other CAs that are out there in the ecosystem.
Okay, great.
And Darren just mentioned he's really excited about the integrations because of making it easier for Rio. That's kind of our whole goal here, is to go and pick some common community abstractions so that we can all integrate and do something better together.
Community, do something better together. All right. Anything else you want to call out for 2.7?
There's a bunch of little work or polish kind of stuff going on. We're going to have a pretty decent amount of new dashboard look and feel that I've been prototyping in my mockups repo. If anyone wanted to take a look at that. But that's most of the high level stuff. It's really kind of focused on the TCP, TLS, telemetry, and security integration points.
And we keep improving, like the Helm support, I think every release is getting much, much better and deeper, which is, again, part of that productionization. What we've noticed over the past 3 months is that people are increasingly asking production-facing questions about Helm, about Cert Manager, these sorts of things. And so these integrations are really top of mind for us.
That's a good sign. Do we want to float a release date out there?
Nope.
Release year?
Post KubeCon, but probably this year.
Okay. Post KubeCon, pre New Year's Day Eve.
Yeah, so somewhere in December sounds right.
Okay. All right.
But like this specific feature, we're definitely not time boxing. We want to make sure that because we're changing a lot of things in the data path here, this is going to take a little bit of focus to make sure that we're shipping a quality release here. So I would expect there to be some good RCs coming online in the next few weeks in the kind of pre-KubeCon timeframe, but we'll be doing a lot of polish work on this one.
RC's probably out soon. Okay, cool. Speaking of KubeCon, I'm going to try and talk and type at the same time, but there's a ton of stuff happening in San Diego next month. So if any of you are joining us, there will be a big booth, big Linkerd booth. Definitely stop by, and all of us will be there. Almost all of us on Team Linkerd will be there. Many of us, I guess. You're all part of Team Linkerd.
A multitude of us.
Yeah. So if you want to...
Will we be democratizing KubeCon?
We will be democratizing KubeCon.
We'll definitely be disrupting it. And probably. Yeah.
Disrupting KubeCon. I don't want to say that. Yeah. I don't want to put that in the official minutes. We'll leave that just for the audio track. Okay, there's going to be a workshop. There is a workshop. It's called Linkerd in Production Workshop. What do they call it? A day 0 workshop. So it's going to happen on Monday. It is super expensive. It is super expensive. But there are scholarships. Yeah, so if you are attending KubeCon, and first try and get your company to pay for this. And if you can't get them to do it, then talk to me, because I'm more interested in educating people about Linkerd than filling the open source coffers. And then tons of talks. So Nordstrom is giving a production talk, which is super cool. Disney was going to give a talk, but unfortunately cannot make it, which was a bummer because I was excited to hear their use case. And then folks from Microsoft are giving a talk. And then who else am I thinking of? Paybase is giving a talk. Anyone else I'm missing? I feel like I'm missing someone. Buoyant. I guess there's going to be Buoyant people there.
Yeah, I'll be doing a deep dive like I normally do, which will be fun.
Okay, great. Linkerd deep dive with Oliver. I'll be doing the intro session as usual. Linkerd intro session with William. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we've got Alex Ellis who joined us, was it last time or the time before on this very call? We'll be giving a talk about OpenFAS. And then I know Darren's also giving a talk, but I'm not going to add it to the list because it doesn't involve Linkerd. Unless, Darren, you promise to add some Linkerd content in there, in which case I will add it to this official list. Maybe talk about how awesome K3S would be if you pair it with Linkerd. Okay, so tons of talks, deep dive intro session, and is there anything else? I think those are the highlights. We'll be all over the place. Oh, we will have hats. We will have hats, but in order to get a hat, can you grab me a hat? I want to wear it. In order to get a hat, you have to demonstrate a functioning Linkerd installation.
Linkerd 2 installation.
Linkerd 2 installation, right. We're very strict about it. So I want to see you type in Linkerd commands. Okay, and then, so that's the fun stuff. On the tragic side, KubeCon EU CFPs are already open. They are due December 4th. So if you have a Linkerd use case that is not suitable for San Diego, that you can't make a talk about in time for San Diego.
Or can't get there.
Yeah, then focus on Amsterdam. Here's what the hats look like. The Linkerd.io on the side. Linkerd logo. I'm not going to wear it because this hat will actually travel with us to KubeCon, so it'll be pristine.
Oh yeah, and Ivan's going to be talking about Linkerd's MTLS feature and how it can work with OPA via, I think, Gatekeeper.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so I think there's two Microsoft talks. One of them is Gatekeeper, and then I think Brian Redmond is giving another one.
Awesome.
Brian Redmond. So Gatekeeper is with Ivan and I think Rita from the Gatekeeper project, and then Brian Redmond will be doing something, I forget exactly. It involves Linkerd, that's all that's important. Oh, and the last thing is there's a Service Mesh Con where there'll be a bunch of Linkerd nonsense. I'll be on a panel.
And it conflicts with the workshop, so you have to choose
the workshop, which is really unfortunate. So you're gonna have to decide. I recommend the workshop.
Do you want deep knowledge or do you want fluff from William? I think that's the
you want to listen to a panel from 12 service mesh enthusiasts wax irritating about the service mesh.
Well, you're giving a keynote, aren't you?
I am giving a 5-minute paid keynote.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's not going to be about Linkerd. So you're going to have to come to find out what that is. Okay. I'll just say conflicts with Linkerd in production.
So
also have
Service Mesh Con if you want William, Linkerd workshop if you want an engineer.
Yeah. I think the choice is clear there. Okay, great. So that's it for KubeCon as far as I know. Well, I guess one last thing. We are always happy to help folks submit and prepare their abstracts and things. So, and
we have starter decks and things like that.
We'll make it really easy for you, and we do it all the time. So if there's a talk that you might be hidden in your brain, but you need a little watering and gardening to get it out, we'll help you. Talk to us. All right. Okay, on to Thomas's special section, Linkerd Heroes. So Thomas, over the past 30 days, Who have been your favorite contributors in the Linkerd community?
So I wanted to actually call out Alejandro, because he is fighting the good CI fight at the moment. When did we move over to the new CI stuff over to GitHub Actions, Oliver? It's been 2 months now?
It's been over the last 2 months. We've been, yeah. I think there's been a few increments, but yeah, basically the last release was most of that.
And come to find out, getting your CI pipeline reliable and getting rid of all the bugs is extremely time intensive and difficult. And Alejandro's just been taking one at a time and slowly smushing all the bugs. It's been great to get there, because we've really gone from CI being a huge pain in the butt 3 months ago to something that we're all super happy with, is way faster, and we've got some good insight into how it all works.
I can't believe I'm going to do this. I think I'm a Linkerd hero this month, actually.
Speaking of improving build times.
Yeah, we got the Linkerd, I think 2 months ago in Travis, the Linkerd proxy build times were hitting 70 to 80 minutes, 80-ish minutes. And through a lot of weekend refactoring work, we've got that down to under 20, which now makes it to the point where I'm not embarrassed to ask people to actually pull the proxy and try to compile it.
Did you say under 20 or 120?
Under 20, yeah, under 20. Yeah, we've then that's with all the integration tests. So you just building, we've also made it much more modular, so you can run tests for only subsets of things. Like, it's a way better system now. It's just been part of the growing pain with learning Rust. And actually, like, not just Rust, but seeing a Rust project scale and how the build tooling from Rust works and stuff like that. So it's been a big learning exercise for the team. But most of that pain fell on my shoulders recently. So maybe the team's the hero, but it sucked. It's better now.
Great, great work, Oliver.
Yeah, I maybe so a one non-self promotion would be the work Eliza did to get a different type of tracing into the proxy, and so we want to instrument all of our proxy data plane infrastructure so it's diagnostic, so we have good diagnostics for it. And over the last release or so, we've moved on to this new logging system that Eliza wrote for the Linkerd proxy, even though it's an independent component. And into 7, or actually probably in next week's Edge release, we'll have much, much better logs with lots more detailed context information, which means when you paste me an error message in Slack, I might actually have a clue what it means.
Wow, that actually will be really helpful.
Yeah.
RC. Okay, cool. Anybody else that we want to call out?
I think those are the good ones. I was looking back through the PRs, and we've got a bunch of other great stuff. Like Tarun has got 2 great tracing PRs that are up and really, really close to getting merged.
Also, someone fixed a bunch of really small, dumb bugs we had. Like, we had like a comparison that was wrong in a sort function. Mm-hmm. So we've had a bunch of people kind of chipping in small but really helpful ways recently.
Oh, that reminds me. One of the changes that's happened over the last couple of weeks that I'm really happy about is that we moved the Linkerd.io website over to GitHub Actions and are now doing integration tests on the CLI, not just the install script, but also actually running the CLI. So we've got some really basic Windows testing now. And we released a new install script that actually lets you have multiple versions available, which is pretty awesome.
Anonymous contributor moved Linkerd website to GitHub Actions.
Yeah, and the CI, that's been a big pain point just because it's not a normal repo CI flow. So it's been very easy for us to break the download function.
Yeah.
No more though.
I'm sorry, Oliver, you mentioned someone. Sorry, Thomas mentioned Tarun.
Tarun's always there, just
Lots.
knocking out huge chunks of work.
Almost ready to merge PRs. Around, was it control plane tracing, is that what you said?
Yep. Control plane tracing and while 2.6 introduced tracing, the only way to turn it on is through annotations. And so Tarun's also got a PR up that makes it possible through the inject command. So kind of finishing out that whole tracing story.
Do we want to talk about the CNI research we did at all?
We could. That feels almost like a separate section. It's actually
Okay.
pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, Zahari did some great research on CNI for us that prevented us from doing a bunch of work that we probably shouldn't do.
I wonder if we should have another section.
Work we didn't do?
Well, no, more like interesting stuff that happened.
No, it'd be good. There's a lot of lessons we learn every sprint, basically, so it'd be good to capture some of that stuff.
Oh my gosh, the Zoom widget is interfering with the URL bar all of a sudden. Okay. Technical problems. All right. So congrats again to Tarun. And then one last one of Zahari, saving us from a bunch of CNI work that would have been painful. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, or at least helping us deprioritize it until we have a better solution in SMI or something like that. We realized how complex that work was going to be, so it was a good lesson.
Right. All right, good. So with all that out of the way, congratulations to each of our Linkerd heroes. There's no reward for you. You just get your name in this doc that no one ever reads. But congratulations nonetheless. And with that, I would like to invite our very special guest, Darren Shepard of Rancher Labs, to give a demo of Rio. Hi, Darren. How are you?
Hello. Yep. So should I just share my screen?
Share your screen. See if it works.
All right. Hopefully this works. Okay. So I'm going to do a demo of Rio. Let me give a little background on Rio first. Rio is, I think the way we're pitching it is we're calling it a micro-PaaS. Basically, it's a layer that just installs on any Kubernetes cluster that adds a lot of PaaS-like functionality, but without all the complexity and bloat traditionally associated with the PaaS. So it does a lot of cool things, like just helping you easily deploy applications. So I'll demo that. Specifically, we've actually been working on for Rio for quite a while. Probably over a year, and at this point we still actually consider it alpha. At KubeCon we will have some interesting announcements and around Rio, how it's progressing and what we're doing with that. But right now it is still a rapidly changing project, and the major change that just happened is we switched to Linkerd by default for the service mesh. So kind of the backstory on that is we've been using Rio very closely uses a service mesh for functionality. What that service mesh is, we don't really care specifically, but we really need the functionality of a service mesh. So historically, we've used Istio, and we've had a really difficult, nasty integration with Istio for a long time. And so we're really excited. It took us a long time to get to this point of being able to abstract out kind of that layer in Rio and be able to make it so that we can use other service mesh, that's not just Istio. And specifically, one of the things that really allowed us to do that was SMI. So what we really did in our last release was we took the service mesh kind of functionality we had within, kind of the points where we were integrating with Istio, and broke it into two categories of service mesh and API gateway. So they're kind of two different buckets for us right now. So for the service mesh stuff, we were able to switch that pretty much to just SMI. So it actually became a really nice, very simple integration in Rio. The amount of programming we have to do to interact with SMI is tiny. It's absolutely nothing compared to what we were doing with Istio. I mean, it was ridiculously complicated what we were doing with Istio. So most of the effort we actually put into supporting Linkerd was actually just bundling it into Rio and making it work. It's just part of like our regular installation. But in terms of just integrating with it, it pretty much just worked. I mean, it's been a really, really nice experience. And I'll demo some of that stuff. So in this last release, we switched to Linkerd and we actually made it the default because it kind of aligns much better with the goals of Rio, being that it's just kind of simple, lightweight, just works. In the next release of Rio, you'll see like even better integration with Linkerd. And from the kind of API gateway perspective, we're going to switch away from Istio for the API gateway stuff to Glue, and then also try to make that pluggable. I think one of the problems we have right now is there's no equivalent of like SMI for API gateway type functionality, which is really just HTTP like routing. Like there's not a standard API for routing, which we'd love to see something like that pop up.
Kubernetes like ingress resource get to anywhere.
It's just, so the problem is like it doesn't do enough. It just, because that's basically just host and path name. But we also need headers is really important. It's like basically like headers ends up being it's really the cookie one. Like that's how you do a lot of like A/B testing and stuff like that.
The Flagger folks have been asking for this as well. So we should actually bring you into the SMI meeting sometime to talk to them about some of this stuff.
Yeah, because that's the biggest thing. So like and that's what like, it's kind of interesting because, we've had a harder time because we use all this routing stuff and we realize once we kind of figured out logically that the functionality of HTTP routing was kind of its own category. I think it would be really nice if it was supported by SMI and it was like a kind of a thing, but like by putting it into its own bucket, it's kind of helped us better model the whole system of like the rest of the service mesh functionality. And then there's like specifically API, like the routing stuff. But yeah, so if there were something there, I'd love that, because like right now we've switched to Glue. Glue's been nice. We've really liked that, but I'd really, it'd be great if there was just an interface for it, because ideally, it seems like functionality that Linkerd could also do at some point.
So there's a issue open that Stefan opened on the SMI spec repo where we're actually trying to figure that out right now.
Okay.
So go take a look and please add your comments there. It would be super helpful. We're trying to figure out a couple different ways to attack it.
Yeah. I mean, I think on day one when SMI came out, like that was like the one issue I put in was I'm like I really need routing, but I'll try to comment on that. It becomes really, I think it's a hard one. It's a little hard one to model. There's a couple decent examples, but between like Istio, what's Glue's done, what Contour has done, there's kind of a lot of different approaches. So I think it's gonna be difficult to come up with one approach. But anyways, I think it's useful work for the community. Okay, so let me actually just demo Rio. So basically, Rio, it's just the way you install Rio. It's just a CLI, like a client-side CLI. So it's like we have a curl script, or you can just you can download the binary directly itself. But it's just a CLI that needs to have a kube config. So it's like if you have kubectl working, then Rio uses the same configuration to talk to the cluster. Similar to Linkerd CLI and everything.
Did you steal that idea from us, Darren? That's our proprietary IP.
Let me see. No, I didn't. I'm trying to think if we had this working before you. I don't know. So to install it, it's going to look a lot like Linkerd. Actually, you just type Rio install, and then basically that will install into your cluster. I kind of already have the brownies pre-baked here, so. It does typically take it takes much longer to install than I would like it to be. We're actually trying to speed it up. It takes maybe 5 minutes to install to pull all the images and crap. But you can run Rio info afterwards and just make sure that everything's looking good with the system, everything's running. Rio does right now. It depends on a lot of other projects. Linkerd is just one of them, but like Cert Manager and Tecton, and there's a lot of different functionality we're pulling in to be able to do kind of this end-to-end thing that we're doing here. So the basic idea of once you have Rio installed is you can run things like run a container, run a service. The CLI, the kind of the user experience should look very similar. It should feel pretty familiar if you've already used Docker or Kubernetes. It's like run and edit, and so you can do something like basic, like I can just run Nginx. So let's see, give it a second to. Oh yeah, Linkerd is initializing. So give it a second, it'll come up. So if I run something just basic, like just run the Nginx container, the first thing you'll notice is we give you, by default, we already set up a public DNS. So you get a public DNS, plus it also has HTTPS on it. So like if I click this is going through like the API gateway, going through Linkerd. I can see all this service and everything in Linkerd. So I get all this stuff. Let's see, it should pop up in a second. Like that's the pod I just deployed. The traffic splits and all that stuff. I don't actually understand some of this stuff. I don't know what the traffic split, like where that comes from. But this is 2.5. So our next release will have S2.6 in it. So I don't know if the dashboard had traffic split in 2.5. But anyway, so once you have it, so you'll notice like this is actually valid. Oh, that's the wrong one. So we're giving you. Oh, I've never done this. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So what we do is when you install Rio, like we give you a public domain. We automatically just make the domain go to. We figure out the IP of your cluster and where the gateway is running, and then issue a let's encrypt certificate. So when you run Rio, you always get valid SSL. And so, that stuff is just kind of already working. So that's just like a very basic use case of just running a container. So running an existing image. So it gets a lot more interesting when you do things like, let me actually run something from Git. So I have a repo here. So I'm going to run this here. So Rio run this. Okay. So when I do that, initially you'll see, okay, it's waiting on the build. If I do Rio build, I can get like the status, like it's running. So basically this is doing like the git clone. So if I do like logs, I can follow what's going on in there it goes. This is the Docker build effectively going. It'll take a second or whatever to run the build. But so like this is doing the git clone and running a Docker build. There's a lot of I can't possibly demo all the functionality in Rio really quickly, but like there's tons of functionality of how to customize like the build and doing very complicated multi-service application, like microservice applications and stuff.
You gave it a GitHub repo, and that repo has is it looking for like a Docker file, a build?
Yeah, so like that's the default. Like the default behavior is like if you just have a Docker file, and as long as your app, like the default behavior, if you don't customize it any further, is like if you just have a Docker file and your application listens on port 8080, then it'll just work. Otherwise, if it listens on a different port, you can change that. If you have a Docker file in a different place, or you have build arguments, we can do that. We can also do multiple builds, multiple services. It starts getting more and more complicated the more and more complicated your application is. But like this is just the super simple demo. And it will also hook up like a GitHub webhook for you. So it'll watch the commits, like I'll demo that in a second. And then it will do, you can also do a PR workflow where it creates brand new services for each PR. So you can have like multiple things running, not just updating one thing in place. Tons of functionality. It's just like, it's impossible to demo it all real quick. But so I want to show you, so once I have this application running, so this thing, this bold ramen, I don't know. This guy, so this is just some little demo app we have running. It was, I don't know if you guys, this is going way back. Evan Haslett actually created this demo way back when. But so what this demo is showing is like, okay, we're just running one replica of the application, and this is the request, and which one is kind of serving it. So what I can do if I run hey, and I run it with a concurrency, well, I'll just do a concurrency of 1 right now. Oh no, that's not actually very useful. Oh no, that's fine. Okay, so like in Linkerd, then I should see like the requests and everything start going up on this. Where is it? Resources. Wait a minute. What's this guy? What was his name of him? Ramen 3. Yeah, I'll go. What's the best way to do this? Overview. Can I see from here? Oh, I'm not running the dashboard. That's why it's not working. Sorry. I think I should shut it down. Linkerd dashboard.
I was about to panic for a moment when I saw that error.
No, yeah. I was like, I'm like, crap.
Everything's working except for Linkerd.
Yeah. That's weird. No, no, I killed it or whatever. So, yeah. So you can see like the request per second, like that's going up. I'm putting load on it and everything. But so what Rio does is we integrate with the underlying service mesh, so we watch like what the traffic, like the request per second and whatnot, and so we can see if you look at here. Let me go and edit this. When we deploy this, we actually by default set it to a scale of 1 to 10 and a concurrency of 10. So we'll auto scale this service up to 10 based off of a concurrent requests of 10. So it's not, it's like live concurrent requests. So, there's some little math there of taking the request per second and then the average latency, and you can get a fuzzy number that's pretty close to the concurrency. So if I go and I put a bunch of traffic on this, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run this load balancer. I'm gonna say I'm gonna do 100 concurrent requests, and I'm gonna hit this URL load. And what this URL does is it slows down the responses. Because if the application is super fast, then you don't get a very high concurrency. So this, gives me a superficially slow response. And you'll see that too in the Linkerd stats, like it will slow down.
Are you using HPA to do all of that, or doing it yourself?
We're doing it ourselves because HPA doesn't do scale to 0. And like, that's one of the, so we also do scale to 0. But HPA, we've just kind of had a hard time getting, like, I've wanted to use HPA, but like, it's just been hard to, it's like, it's a lot more complicated.
A bit of a toy.
Yeah. And it requires custom metrics and the metrics API. And it's like, it's so much to just do something. I don't know.
Are you using SMI metrics to base that RPS number? No,
I'm not, but that would be great. That would be, I think, so the way we were doing this before with Istio is we were just hitting the Envoy sidecars, and I'm pretty sure the engineer who then did the Linkerd stuff just basically is scraping your guys' Prometheus metrics from the sidecar.
Which is also
it'd be much better if there was a standard way. So I think that would just be ignorance on our part. That there.
It's been pretty. That's my metrics has been in flux, but I think it's now at the point where we'd love to know if it doesn't work.
Oh yeah, so I'd love to, yeah. Because that's the thing, it's like we need like the basic functionality. If it's exposed in a standard way, then it's pretty cool. So here you can see like we're hitting the application now where we've auto scaled this up to 10. You can see each request being, this is who actually served the request, the one that says serving. Okay, so now if I go and I update the application, so I'll go back to Git here, and in my Docker file, I can change the color from green to, you guessed it, blue. So let me just commit this blue. So we can do a whole PR workflow and everything, but this is just, I'm just gonna push it directly.
I was the only one who used add-p for my darks days.
Oh yeah, it's an addiction of mine. People always ask, like, do you do that every time? Like, yeah, I don't know. Okay, so what happens now? Let me just I'll just watch the PO out PS. So, okay. So right now I don't have the webhook functionality turned on. It's pretty simple to enable. You just do like Rio secret. I think you just have to give a GitHub webhook. You have to configure an OAuth token or a, one credential or whatever. So I didn't do that in the simple install. So we fall back to polling. So it does take like, I don't know, maybe 15 seconds or something like that before we'll detect the change if we're not doing the webhook mode. But basically, once we detect the change, let's see, revision. Okay, yeah. So I think it already. If I look at the revision, so it did detect. There's a new commit here. Rio build looks like the build succeeded.
And that's all using build kit, so you're caching things and not having to do a full Docker build every time.
Yeah. So we're running a build kit pod. Okay, so now once like we've done the build, we've so now basically we've got we have 2 revisions. We have the original one, and then this is just basically the commit. But you can see we're changing the weight on the application. This is all configurable, but like by default, we'll just slowly roll it out 5% at a time. And so this is like using the SMI and that stuff, the traffic splitting. And so now you can see a certain number of the requests that are coming in are showing up as a blue cow. So like, and since we're doing auto scaling, as I continue to like, put load on this, the math is fuzzy and the metrics are fuzzy. So it will float somewhere around like 10 replicas. So you can see it's gone up to 12, but then they'll probably drop down. But so it's like as I'm shifting the traffic here, like we're automatically rolling this out. We're creating new replicas and then deleting the old ones, and so this is kind of like a fully automated rollout of an application with auto scaling and all that stuff. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of piece together these functionality to do more manual things or more automated stuff and whatnot. And so eventually, as this goes to 100% of the traffic to the new version, you'll end up with 10 replicas, all blue.
That's really cool.
That is an awesome demo. I'm really mind blown by this.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, so this is just the kind of, there's a lot more that Rio does in terms of like there's a whole, because this is just kind of like the very basic thing. There's routing functionality. Again, that's all like the let me see. This is like API gateway type stuff.
Like a serverless thing, where you're like, hey, just take the repo and like make it happen, scale it up, okay, scale it down.
Yeah, and that's actually the history of Rio was I really got into the serverless space of like, hey, let's see if we can build something in serverless. I don't know. And what we basically found was like, there's a lot of really cool things in serverless. Serverless confuses people. And so we built basically kind of like a serverless platform, but then like backed it up a little bit to still run traditional containers. And we can even do stateful things. We can do stateful sets. So it's like, it'll do general purpose workloads, but it's very kind of coming from trying to get to this serverless world of like, just put things in Git and deploy them and, magic happens and whatnot.
And things like the
Microsoft
Dapper announcement will fit right into this as well. Where like if you have the application framework that fits well with the mesh and all this, it'll all just fall out. It's really nice.
Yeah. So that's a quick demo. There's a lot more functionality in Rio. It is like, as I was saying, it is alpha. Like we do unfortunately keep changing things because like making some big changes. But KubeCon, we will have some pretty cool announcements around this, and it's going to stabilize. And we have some things coming that are make this stuff even simpler. So it's pretty cool. It's been a fun project, and it's been really, really nice as we've integrated with Linkerd. It's been a really nice experience.
Coming from great taste in software.
If anybody follows me on Twitter, they know my feelings about Istio as I've used it over the last.
I should probably tell you that we may be quoting you. We may be quoting one of these tweets in our Linkerd literature that we'll be distributing at KubeCon.
I think I may actually be on your homepage. I swear. Oh wait, No, Linkerd. What did you guys?
Linkerd.com. Jesus. .io.
.io. Oh, there you go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm on the. I'm on your. Yeah.
Well, you're a great source of quotes. So.
Well, I think this is great how these projects fit together, right? Like knowing your boundaries of a project like Linkerd, we don't want to go into lots of these spaces where, it's just not our business to tell people how to deploy. But having a golden path like this is like absolutely what I want to recommend to people, right? Like you should be using things like this that make this better. It's not Linkerd's job.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been it's been a really nice. I mean, to be honest, I think as I've worked with Linkerd, like I've coming from first doing everything with Istio, and it's kind of this. It does everything in the world, but I don't know, the way it's represented. It's just really hard to understand. When we switched over and started using like Linkerd and SMI, it's kind of like the whole landscape got a lot clearer. It's just a lot easier to understand of like where the layers are, kind of what should be doing what. So it's been, it seems, it's like I really like what you guys are doing. It seems very complementary to a lot of projects out there. So nice.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Welcome to Linkerd Club.
Yeah. Welcome to the Love Fest.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much, Darren, for that. We're at the top of the hour, so I want to finish up here. But yeah, that was an awesome demo, and I can't wait to see what you have in store for us at KubeCon.
Yep. We're working hard on some fun things.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. So, the last thing on the agenda ostensibly was going to be the Stump the Maintainers, but since that is usually pretty boring anyways, let's just skip over that. And
we're unstumpable. It's okay.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll just finish things up. Okay, so I'll just put in here, it was amazing. And we'll call
if you want to stump me, try on Twitter. There you go.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so that's it for this time. Thanks everyone for attending. You know how to find us on the Linkerd Slack and on Twitter and on GitHub. And extra special thank you to Oliver and Thomas, and also to Darren Shepard for an excellent demo.
And our heroes.
Yeah, and I'll see hopefully many of you in San Diego. Otherwise, we'll see you next month. Same time, same channel.
All right. Bye, everybody.